Joining us today, and welcome to our webinar on teacher induction programs and retention, where we'll be sharing insights from a study of Connecticut's teacher education and mentoring program. My name is Nicole Breslow, and I co-lead the REL's Professional Learning and Development Research Alliance. This is our agenda for our time together today. We'll start with a brief introduction and some background about the Regional Educational Laboratory. We'll then provide an overview of Connecticut's TEAM program, followed by a summary of the study and its findings. We'll discuss the implications of the study for practice, and you'll have a chance to hear from a practitioner about how the study is being used. And finally, there'll be time for your questions, and then we'll do a brief wrap-up. The Regional Educational Laboratory Northeastern Islands is one of 10 regional labs that's funded by the Institute of Educational Sciences at U.S. Department of Education. REL Northeastern Islands serves Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, Rhode Island, New York, Puerto Rico, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Our mission is to support educators and policymakers in this region to use data and research to improve outcomes for students. We work in close partnership with educational stakeholders to do our work. We conduct research studies, disseminate research findings. We support stakeholders in using evidence and provide technical assistance on using research and data. One of our research partnerships is the Professional Learning and Development Alliance. This alliance works with a group of district leaders from across our region to provide support in using evidence to make decisions about professional learning activities. The alliance members developed a research agenda that focuses on two priorities: building their capacity to evaluate their professional learning and developing their understanding of evidence-based models of professional learning. The TEAM study you'll be hearing about today grows out of the work of this alliance. I also encourage you to visit our Alliance's website if you're interested in seeing other work related to our priorities. There are three goals for today's webinar. First, participants will learn about the association between adherence to Connecticut's teacher education and mentoring program and new teacher retention. Participants will also learn how to measure implementation fidelity for mentoring programs. And finally, participants will learn about variations that might exist in program adherence. You'll be hearing today from our REL study team, Dr. Makoto Hanita, Dr. Jessica Bailey, and Georgia Bach. And you'll also be hearing from Claudine Premack from the Connecticut State Department of Education. She's the TEAM program manager. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Claudine now to give you an overview of Connecticut's TEAM program.
Hello, this is Claudine Premack, and I'm really happy to be joining today in this presentation. We began working with the REL over a year ago because in Connecticut, our program is required to do an evaluation every 3 to 5 years to really determine the effect of our program on our beginning teachers. And so I just want to give you a brief overview of what the TEAM program is all about. I think it'd be helpful to understand a little bit more before we begin talking about the results. Connecticut has always had a strong support program for our beginning teachers going back to the late 80s. We had a mentoring program where teachers were asked to complete portfolios. It was called the BEST program. In 2009, that program was sunsetted, and we began to develop the TEAM program, Teacher Education and Mentoring Program. And in 2010, we fully implemented the program. At that time, we rolled it out to all of our districts in the state of Connecticut. It is a legislatively mandated program that requires teachers to engage in a reflective process. And the diagram that's on the right side of your slide there gives you a sense of the process that we use. So the colored boxes really reflect a process of continuous professional learning that teachers we expect engage in throughout their entire careers. And so we layered the TEAM program and that process for each of our instructional modules on top of that professional learning process. And so teachers are asked to, think about their practice, to use our Connecticut Common Core of Teaching, which is a standards-based document that really identifies the foundational skills and knowledge that all educators should possess. We use that document to inform our educator prep programs. They assess all of their candidates based on those standards, and then those standards continue throughout a teacher's profession, underlying the work that they do in their team program, also through our evaluation and professional learning. So the program was designed to really be a professional growth process. It's designed to really help to promote our early career educators to understanding their own practice and make changes to their practice that will result in positive outcomes for students. Our program is tied to certification. It's a multi-year program, and teachers who go through the program need to complete it successfully in order to be eligible to advance to our second tier of certification in Connecticut, which is called a provisional certificate. They begin with an initial. Our district mentors are assigned to individual teachers, and mentors have to meet particular criteria such as holding a provisional or higher level certificate, having had a minimum of 3 years teaching experience, and then they have to be selected and meet the criteria that their district also sets for them. And once they've been selected, they then go through a training program, which is a program that is approved by the state of Connecticut, and regardless of where our mentors are trained, they're all getting the same training and receiving the same information. Our goal is to really have a high level of educators who are able to support those beginning teachers. In addition to being eligible to serve as a mentor, those teachers also who go through the training are eligible to serve as cooperating teachers. In Connecticut, you can't take a student teacher unless you are trained through the mentoring program, through our team program. And so districts are required to assign every single beginning teacher a mentor. We ask them to do that generally within 30 days of hire, and then those mentors are required to provide support to those teachers throughout the generally first 2 years of their career. In some instances, it could go as long as 3 years. Teachers, however, who do not formally complete the team program successfully by their deadline date, which is 3 years from the date that they begin the team program, they lose eligibility for continued certification. I will say that we have a very, very low percentage of teachers who do not complete the program successfully. What we have found more than anything is that teachers procrastinate in actually doing the program and then find themselves that they've run out of time. And so it's really only been a handful of teachers over the 10-year period of time who have not been successful in completing the program within their deadline date. I also want to mention that our team program has been nationally recognized by the New Teacher Center out of California, because we meet what they consider their 3 critical criteria for a high-quality induction program, one being that we are a multi-year program, 2, that we tie it to certification, and 3, that we provide dedicated funding. We provide all districts with an allocation to help them to offset the cost of implementation within their district. In addition to that, we pay for all of the training for mentors, and we also pay for a dashboard that the districts use in order to, for beginning teachers to complete the modules, but also for the districts to monitor that progress through the completion of modules. Team is divided up into 5 instructional modules. 4 of those modules, which really were the focus of this study, are in the instructional modules that require teachers to either complete a reflection paper or some kind of a project, but those requirements are a little bit different for the 5th module, which is professional responsibility. We require teachers to engage in facilitated conversations around ethical scenarios so that they can discuss what the impact is on their practice. This study did not review those particular, that Module 5, but we did focus in the study on the 4 instructional modules. What's really, I think, outstanding about the program is that the modules are designed to be very specific and relevant to a teacher's own practice and their students. So teachers really focus on their own practice. They reflect on their current situation. They bring some data to the table with a conversation with their mentor where they're able to identify a specific area of focus. All of our modules align with our Connecticut Common Core of Teaching, which are the standards to which we hold all educators to. And then based on that conversation with the mentor, they identify a specific focus area for which they will engage in new learning to develop their understanding about their particular practice and identify strategies and ways in which they can address those particular areas that they're trying to focus on. And throughout that, they're documenting the application that they're doing within their classrooms, and then they will use that information to be able to complete their reflection paper. All reflection papers are reviewed by trained reviewers, and they need to meet the criteria that's set in our statute. They have to demonstrate new learning and what they've learned about themselves and their practice, how that has impacted their practice and changed what they're doing, and what are the positive outcomes for their students. We also require mentoring hours, and you'll hear as we talk about this study how the mentoring hours were perhaps a difficult thing to capture, and we're working on that. But it is mandated within our legislation that mentors provide a minimum of 50 contact hours with their beginning teachers over the course of the 2 years. We know that in many instances it takes more than 50 hours to mentor our beginning teachers. We don't require mentoring hours to only be focused on the instructional modules. They are really induction strategies that we expect our mentors to also be helping beginning teachers to navigate the emotional and the social part of becoming a teacher and transitioning to the classroom. We know that you can't possibly learn everything that you need to learn in your preparation program, so this mentoring program is really designed to help teachers accelerate their practice and also to retain new teachers. So we're really happy with having done this study, and even with the results that we have yielded from the study. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Jessica Bailey, who's going to provide you an overview of the study and its findings. Jessica?
Thank you, Claudine. So before we get into the actual overview of what we did for this study and our findings, I'd like to just engage you a little bit to hear about how your involvement is with a teacher induction program. So let's go to the poll, and I'll have you answer the 2 questions that you'll see here on your screen. Since we have a lot of people from all over the country today, can you answer whether your state has a teacher induction program? And if so, if you know how many years of induction are required, please indicate that as well. So it's looking like 2/3 of you are indicating that there is a teacher induction program that you know of in your state, maybe a little more than 2/3 now. And it looks like either 1, 2, or 3 years are required there. So that's an interesting spread. In Connecticut, as Claudine mentioned, it's 2 years, but you do have a 3rd year if you're in extenuating circumstances. Okay, thank you so much for answering that poll. I'm going to bring us back to the slides. And myself and my colleague Makoto Haneda are going to talk about the study and its findings. So to give you a little bit of background on the study, as Claudine actually just went into great detail on, so I'm going to be quick here. TEAM is supporting new teachers in part to help reduce teacher turnover by setting the teachers up for success. So we undertook this study in partnership with Claudine and the Connecticut State Department of Education to address the state's legislative requirement to study the program's implementation and outcomes. Our partners were particularly interested in knowing whether the districts were implementing the team requirements with fidelity, especially for the lower performing districts in the state. Those are the Alliance and Opportunity districts, where teacher turnover was higher than in the state's other districts. So I want to mention an important point about fidelity. So this is a term that is widely used, but not always in a consistent manner. In research, fidelity refers to several dimensions of implementation. It can refer to adherence, dosage, the amount of the program, and as well as the quality of the program delivery, among other things. So in this study, we are particularly focused on the dimension of adherence, which refers to the extent to which teachers adhered to the program requirements. Okay. So what is program adherence, and why might this matter to you in your work? So first, it's important for a program to be implemented as it was intended to reach its maximum benefit. If a program that was shown to be effective under certain conditions, say, for example, a one-on-one reading intervention for students, is implemented very differently, say, as a group intervention, it may lead to a different outcome than what is expected. So even a program that has shown to have a strong impact could fail to produce the desired impact if its implementation is not adhered to how it was designed. So why might a state, district, or school leaders want to analyze the association between program adherence and teacher retention? Well, in Connecticut, the state had anecdotal information that adherence to the team requirements varied across the state. So we sought to study how implementation varied and how it related to retention. Specifically, we wanted to understand if teachers with higher levels of adherence had higher probabilities of retention. A positive association between adherence and retention would support the idea that the team program had the potential to increase retention. And this would provide the state with one piece of evidence to support the continuation of the program. So lastly, I'll just reiterate the point that adherence is not the same as fidelity of implementation. It's just one dimension here, and that's what we were focusing on. Okay, so our research question specifically that we looked at is here. We actually had 3 research questions. So if you find the if you find the report, which we'll put a link to in the chat, we'd like you to go to that link and download the report. You'll see that we actually had 3 research questions, but the one that we are just talking about today was, is there a relationship between adherence to the requirements of the team program and in-district and in-state retention of teachers after 1 year of teaching and after 3 years? Okay. So the study used descriptive statistics and regression analysis to examine adherence to the program requirements and its relationship with teacher retention for nearly 8,000 beginning teachers. The sample represents 4 cohorts of teachers who began teaching between the school years 2012-13 and 2015-16. We examined retention after 1 year and after 3 years of teaching. So as Claudine was mentioning earlier, there are several program requirements. We were able to only address 6 of the program requirements. Some of the other program requirements had data issues. The establishment of the mentor and their teacher, and when that happened was one that was a little bit complicated to capture data on. It wasn't being logged reliably. Okay, now I'm going to move us on to a little bit more detail about what the program requirements are. So the first set of requirements refers to the modules that Claudine mentioned earlier. Teachers are required to complete 2 modules in the first year, 5 modules within 2 years, or for those with extenuating circumstances, such as they were out on leave, they had 3 years to complete all 5 modules. So we found that 86% of teachers completed 2 modules in the first year, and 75% of teachers completed all 5 modules in 2 years. Okay. The next requirement is that a teacher have a total of 10 contact hours per modules 1 through 4. In the first year, teachers should have a total of 20 hours since they're expected to complete modules 1 and 2. And over the 2 years, the average should be 10 hours per module. We found that 36% of teachers had an average of 10 contact hours with a mentor per modules 1 through 4. The last set of requirements that we studied refer to reflection papers that teachers needed to submit. In the first year, the requirement is 2 reflection papers over the 2 years. 2 reflection papers, and over the 2 years, they should submit 4 reflection papers. The reflection papers are in relation to the modules that they complete. So we found that 78% of teachers completed 2 reflection papers in the first year, and 77% completed all 4 reflection papers in 2 years. Okay, so now that you have that bit of background information about our study, I'm going to bring us to another quick poll to get your perspective on a couple things. So if you're familiar with your induction model in your state, what are some of the requirements that are included in your induction model? Looks like there's mentors, and we'd like to know, have you participated in a teacher induction program either as a teacher or a mentor? Okay, so it looks like we have lots of folks who have been a mentor or a teacher. Some who have been neither, that's okay too. And it looks like everyone's saying that they have contact hours as a mentor. Some of you have modules, some of you have reflection papers, and others. Feel free to write in the chat what some of the others are. Okay, great. Thank you so much for participating. I'm going to keep us moving, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Makoto so that he can talk a little bit more about how we measured program adherence.
Okay, so how did we quantify the program adherence? And here's how. To analyze the relationship between adherence and retention, we needed to calculate the adherence score for each teacher. And it is a number of team program requirements to which a teacher adheres divided by the total number of program requirements. So for the adherence score for the full program year, there were 6 requirements. So there were, if the teacher adhered to 2, it's 2 divided by 6. But for the adherence score for the first year, there are only 3 relevant requirements. So if the teacher adheres to 2 of them, it will be 2 divided by 3. So adherence score for a given teacher ranges from 0, meaning the teacher completes none of the requirements, to 1, meaning the teacher completed all the requirements. And here's the result. First of all, once your adherence score is calculated for each teacher, it was used as a predictor for the retention for the teacher. And we used a statistical model called multi-level logistic regression, and that's a detail. And this analysis, what's important is produce the mathematical function that shows how the predicted probability of a given teacher being retained will change as he or her adherence score changes from 0 to 1, 0 to 0.1, 0.1 to 0.2, and so on, all the way to the adherence score 1. So this bar graph shows the predicted probability of retention for the adherence score 0.25 and 0.75. So just as an example, just to show the general pattern of the association, and if you take the look at the very bottom legend, the left side of the graph shows the retention after 1 year. And the first pair, black and red bar, shows the predicted probability of retention at the district after 1 year. And under 2 scenarios. One, when the teacher completed 25% of requirements, which is the black bar. The other, under the condition when the teacher completed 75% requirement, which is the red bar. So as you can see, the predicted probability of retention improves as the adherence score for the teacher goes up. So the remaining three graphs are pretty much the same. As you can see, under the condition when teachers adhere more, the retention goes up. So the second one, retention in the Connecticut public school system after 1 year. And the right-hand side after 3 years. So it's a 3-year retention retained in district and retained in public school system. Again, the pattern is pretty clear. And in summary, teachers who completed more team requirements were more likely to stay in the same district and also the Connecticut public school system after 1 and also 3 years of teaching students. And here we were interested in doing this. Once the adherence score was calculated for each teacher, what we did here was we got the result for the overall association between adherence and retention. We analyzed the data in such a way that the predicted probability of retention will be calculated separately for opportunity and other districts. And again, the pattern is very clear. Under the more adherence, the probability of retention goes up after 1 year and after 3 years, and whether the teachers are at opportunity district or not. So teachers in both opportunity and non-opportunity districts who complete more of the team requirements are more likely to stay in the same district after 1 and 3 years of teaching. And the next slide, this is the result for retention in the Connecticut public school system. Again, after 1 and 3 year teaching, and separately for opportunity and other districts. Again, the trend is very clear. Better adherence, better retention. So there are additional key findings which include, aside from analyzing the relationship between program adherence and retention, we also analyzed data to understand what factors might predict high or low adherence to the program. So program adherence was higher for module completion and reflection paper submission than contact hours. And program requirements was adherence to program requirements were higher for teachers in the preschool and elementary school than secondary schools. And teachers in alliance districts had higher completion of the program requirements related to teacher mentor contact hours and also module completion than other districts. And here I've hand over to Georgia. But first we have Paul, I think.
Thanks, Makoto. So I'll just take us through our final poll. So could you all give us an idea of how your state has been a part of a study on its teacher induction program? Have you been a part of it? Have you not been a part of it? Or if you don't know, that's totally okay too. It looks like about a quarter of people have, maybe almost a third, have been a part of their teacher induction program has been a part of a study, so that's really interesting. All right, so I think we'll move back and we will start by talking about some of the study implications. So I will discuss some of the overall implications of the study, and then I will pass things over to Claudine, who will discuss how Connecticut plans to use the findings to inform their planning and decisions. So just a quick recap of the key findings. We found that teachers who completed more team program requirements were more likely to stay in the same district or in the state's public school system. This was also true for teachers in the 10 lowest performing districts in the state, which, as we mentioned earlier, are called the opportunity districts. So what are some things for states and also districts to consider when implementing or looking to implement their own teacher induction programs? First, they may find it worthwhile to dig into the relationship between program participation and teacher retention and really consider what benefits their program is providing to teachers, especially those in low-performing districts. And then second, looking more closely at program adherence may also be an avenue to make decisions around program improvement. So thinking about investigating why program adherence was stronger or weaker for certain program components or modules, and really thinking about what changes in program content or delivery could be made better to support teachers in those specific areas. States may also find it useful to examine variation in program adherence across districts or schools. So in districts or schools that were completing fewer requirements, why was this the case? For example, maybe it was because teachers lacked the time to complete the requirements, or maybe it was because they felt like the content or the program activities could have been more relevant or suited to their practice. So understanding the answers to these questions could help states to direct support to these places and really help them to improve program adherence for their induction programs. This also may be an opportunity for states to conduct some interviews or focus groups to get a more nuanced understanding of some of the challenges that districts or schools have faced when implementing their teacher induction programs. So this study didn't specifically explore why variation took place, but that would certainly be a very useful next step for Connecticut and other states who are implementing induction programs. And then lastly, this study's methods can act as guidelines for other state or district data teams to develop their own measures of program adherence to really begin exploring the effectiveness of their teacher induction programs. And so now I will pass things over to Claudine, who will talk about some of the ways in which Connecticut plans to use the results.
So Connecticut actually was very pleased with the results of this study. We're quite happy to learn that what we have hypothesized for a number of years, that our program does provide that added support for early career educators to help accelerate their practice, but also to retain them in our schools and our districts. And so the study backs that up and supports that. The study does give us some areas that we really want to explore further. And so for starters, we plan to share all of the findings with our Connecticut Department of Education leadership team, and I believe there are a few of them who are participating on this webinar this afternoon, and I thank them for joining us. And we also have in each of our districts someone that is required, each district is required to appoint somebody who is their team district facilitator. And so that is the person who really oversees the full implementation of team within their district. And sharing the results with our district facilitators and perhaps bringing them together as a focus group and talking about some of the findings and thinking about, what are the contributing factors to those variations in implementation, and how can we provide additional support that will help improve the outcome. So we certainly have a lot of things that we probably want to do in terms of how we reach out to our stakeholders within the field. We also have our RESC staff in Connecticut. Our RESC is our Regional Educational Service Centers. There are 6 of them, and they are divided up by the regions in Connecticut. And they are partners with us in this work. They provide support to the districts, and they provide training. And they also, I think, would be very instrumental in a focus group with stakeholders to and understand a little bit further some of the results that we're looking at. Recently, we also had an educator in Connecticut who just completed presenting her dissertation on TEAM with a focus on our alliance districts. Her focus was on mentoring and the strategies that they're using with their teachers. And so we're anxious to be able to do some cross-referencing between her dissertation and her study and this particular study. So we think that would be another way for us to begin to look a little bit closer at what's happening within districts that are having a high success rate and those who perhaps are not meeting all of the requirements that need to be met within the time frame. We also have an office in our department called the Turnaround Office, which works with all of our alliance districts. And it seems that they have a great deal of, the alliance districts seem to be doing a very good job in helping to promote the teachers through the TEAM program and provide them the supports they need. So I think it would be beneficial for us to partner up with them and share the study and also have some conversations about what's happening in those districts and are there things that we could repeat. One of the things that we've actually already begun to do based on the findings is talk about the mentoring hours. It was difficult for the REL to be able to capture that, and we really believe part of that was because the districts were not necessarily requiring mentors to log their hours. We have really stepped up our requirement and requiring them to be sure that mentors are logging their hours and they're documenting them so that we are able to see more specifically what mentors are doing. In addition to logging the hours, they also need to document a summary of what those hours include so that we know whether they're talking about their specific module that they're working on, or are there other things that are coming up that the mentor is helping to support those early career teachers with. So I think looking into all of those things and being able to capture that will help us to better understand what is contributing to the good results and how we can actually begin to improve those results going forward. We also want to take a closer look at the elementary setting. We know that the elementary setting seems to produce a stronger adherence to the program, but is it the design of an elementary school? It's a little bit different than a high school and a middle school. And are there some practices that we might be able to duplicate or find ways to modify that would work well for our middle and high school teachers? And then finally, we want to use these findings to share with all of even our legislators. Connecticut has had, money that has been specifically dedicated to supporting our TEAM program, and I believe that looking at the results to see that it is having a positive impact on our teachers and on our pipeline here in Connecticut could help us to make the case for additional funding as well. And so at this point, I'm going to hand this over to Makoto, and he's going to go over more of the results of the study. Makoto?
Thank you. So here I'd like to step back a little bit and let's talk about, consideration for measuring program adherence, because this study measured program adherence, and it was interested in of itself in terms of variation in program adherence, but also used this variation to study the adherence and retention relationships. And we learned several lessons, so we'd like to share with you. Now, first, why measure program adherence? And we summarize 2 points. So one is when research finds a lack of program impact or very small impact, there's a danger of concluding, that program doesn't work or has a very little impact. And if, however, lack of impact may be the result of lower adherence, and which happens a lot, and why the program itself has a real potential. Now, that could have a consequence, yes? So without knowing the level of program adherence, there's no way to know which might be the case. So that's one point. And the other point is measuring program adherence helps one identify which teachers, schools, or districts, what type of schools, district teachers may need extra assistance in improving program implementation. So those are two reasons we would like to stress. And here's a bit of a nuts and bolts about how we measure program adherence. So first of all, list all program requirements. And in this study, they were found in a program manual. So that was very helpful. And then calculate adherence score. And in this study, each program requirement was given a score of 1 if met by the teacher, or 0 if not met by the teacher. And that adherence score was calculated as the total of this score divided the number of requirements. So now the considerations. In this study, each program requirement was given equal weight. So if there are 6 requirements, each of the 6 counted equally. But there might be cases that if certain requirements are more important than others, perhaps they could be weighted heavier in the calculation of adherence score. So those are the considerations. And finally, we'd like to share some of the challenges we encountered in measuring program adherence, which might be the case for future studies, including possible challenges include missing information. And in this study, some teachers had missing data on contact hours for some of the modules, but not others. And so we therefore redefined the original program requirement of total of 10 contact hours per module into average of 10 contact hours per module 1 through 4. And module 1 through 4 were the modules that involved writing the reflection paper. Now, measuring program adherence before completion, that was the second challenge we encountered. So to study the association between program adherence and retention after the first year, we needed to drop certain program requirements that pertains to the second year. For example, 5 modules in 2 years. Well, we needed to drop this. So this resulted in a calculation of first year adherence score based on only 3 program requirements. So those are a bit of the challenges we encountered, we needed to improvise. And now I'd like to talk a bit more about the, if you're interested in, and I hope you are, for more information about the study, and the title of the study is Investigating the Relationship Between Adherence to Connecticut Teacher Education Mentoring Program, Requirements and Teacher Retention. And this page, if you go to this site, there will be a full report and a brief and snapshot and appendices. And now I'd like to ask Jeff to continue.
Okay, now we're at the question and answer period. So it looks like we've had a lot of great questions coming in. We also had some coming in when you registered. So thank you all for that. And just so you know, we did just put the link again in the chat. So if you are interested in our full report or the shorter report, you can just click on that link. Feel free to keep your questions coming in. We'll try to answer as many as we can. I'm going to go through them from topic area. So there were a couple questions that came in that were about the mentors. And Claudine, I'm going to ask you to address these so you can, in a minute, unmute yourself. The first question is, do your mentors observe classes on a weekly basis and use tools to collect data of practice? Can you just briefly address that?
Sure. We don't necessarily require mentors to have to observe classes on a weekly basis, but we do require that they do conduct observations. We train them in how to collect objective evidence and provide feedback that's actionable feedback. And so there is an expectation that mentors are able to provide that feedback through observations. Unfortunately, and I think there was a question that was posed also about how much time in our teachers in a position where they're teaching and also mentoring. And so if I can address that question right now too, I think it fits here. Our teachers generally, our mentors, generally are classroom teachers. We do have several retired teachers who come back, and that's all they do is work with our beginning teachers. But the majority of our mentors in the state are also classroom teachers. We do have a limit on the number of beginning teachers that they are able to actually support. For that reason, because we know teachers are really busy with their own work as well. And one of the models that we do advocate for is a collaborative model, so that they're working with one another. And I have to tell you that our mentors, for as many years as our programs have been in existence, our mentors always leave training saying that it's the best professional development that they've ever received. So it helps them, and it actually elevates their work as a professional as well. Okay?
That's great. Thank you, Claudine. There was also another question that came in from the registration about the background and experience of the mentors. I think you've also just addressed that, saying that most of them are teachers currently teaching, or that they are former teachers who are now retired. Is there anything else to add to that?
Just that in order to become a mentor, there's a basic criteria that the state requires that they have been teaching for a minimum of 3 years, and that in addition to that, they also hold a provisional or higher level certificate. And then every district writes their own teacher and education mentoring plan, and in that plan they outline the specific criteria that they expect mentors to hold. And so they have to go through a process within their district to be selected in order to be mentors.
That's very helpful. So now there's a question about the team program, and Claudine, this would be another one for you. Is there any data about how much the program costs to implement?
We have a good idea of what it costs to implement because prior to 2018, the state was providing the mentor stipends. We were paying all of the stipends for the entire state for all of the mentors in Connecticut. In 2018, our legislature had to cut the funding due to our sedate budget was in a place where they just could no longer fund it. And so districts had to take on that responsibility because the program is a legislatively mandated program, and in order for teachers to advance to the next level of certification and maintain continued certification, they need to complete teams. So we have a very good sense of what it costs between the training that we pay for, the database, the data dashboard that we provide to all of the participants in the team program, in addition to release time that mentors need to be able to conduct observations and meet with their beginning teachers, to attend training, and also for us on the state level to be able to provide our partners at the RESCs with the funding so that they can conduct training, because certainly we can't do all of that at the state level. We rely very much on our partners to do this work with us.
Thank you so much. Now there's another question about how the state is supporting the team program. And Claudine, do you know about how many staff members at the state level are focused all or mostly on new teacher support?
So that would be me and our data manager, Gotti Weiner. We really are the two. Initially in 2010, there were 6 of us that were all focused on this when we were rolling out the program. But because the program truly is designed to be a district-based program, and districts have a lot of flexibility in how they implement the program within their district, provided they're adhering to the pieces that are mandated by our state legislature. The only people now, again, with retirements and budget cuts and everything, we are down to just the two of us. And, of course, my supervisor also, who had come from a district and served as a district facilitator and understands the program from that level, is also extremely helpful to implement this.
And Claudine, for those folks who are on the line that are not from Connecticut, can you just give a quick reminder of the scope of Connecticut in terms of number of teachers, the student body, number of districts?
We have 170 districts. Unfortunately, I don't have those numbers at the top of my head. I know generally our beginning teacher population each year is around 3,500 teachers, and so we know that we're supporting at least that number of teachers each year. I don't necessarily have the full number of students, so sorry.
No, that's okay. Some people just might not be that familiar with Connecticut, but I'm your neighbor, so I know a little bit about it.
Yeah.
So let's turn to another question about the state support. So what accountability pieces are in place to ensure mentors meet their requirements? Essentially, what oversight does Connecticut provide?
So we provide every district with a data dashboard and the workspace. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we are requiring now that mentors have to document their mentoring hours. The districts have a great deal of leverage over this because the districts pay the mentor stipends. Although we provide an allocation to help offset some of that cost, that stipend is coming from their Board of Education. So the district can reduce the stipend if the mentoring hours are not met. And so I think we have been really good at getting that message out there because we're hearing from district facilitators that when mentors are not providing the hours, they are able to cut that stipend back, and they're not going to pay a mentor who hasn't actually done the work. And so the other piece is that mentors and the beginning teachers are documenting within that dashboard, and that dashboard provides us as a state with a mechanism so that we're able to sort of get a peek into each of the districts to see how the district is doing. And we provide loads of monitoring tools also for the district facilitators so they can also look at how many modules are being completed by beginning teachers. And the dashboard provides a beautiful graphic that even shows you the progress of a module. So what stage are teachers at in their progress through that module? And so district facilitators can be, proactive to reach out to beginning teachers who are not meeting those requirements.
That's very helpful. Thank you so much. Now, there was a question that came in also about the study results and thinking about teacher retention. It asked, why do the teachers who are leaving, why do they leave? That is a question that we're asked when my colleagues and I do teacher mobility and retention studies. We are asked that all the time. Unfortunately, there is not usually a lot of data that we are able to collect on that question. But I know in some states, like where I am in Rhode Island, that the state does have some exit interviews, but from what I understand, it's not always available to be aggregated or analyzed in a comprehensive way. Claudine, is there any information that you get from the exit interviews or any other way about reasons why the teachers are leaving?
So the exit interviews are, I think, really important, and I know that some of my colleagues who work more closely with our turnaround office have really focused a lot on strategies for understanding why they're losing teachers within their districts. One of the things that we do see in Connecticut happen frequently is a lot of our teachers leave the state to go to other states, whether it's, a move because of family or, a career move for others due, to family husband or wife who has been transferred to another state. So we do know that some of our attrition rate is because of that movement. Beyond that, I think it definitely presents us with something that we may want to explore a little bit further in understanding why teachers are staying where they are.
Definitely. There's always a need for that information. The last question I think we'll have time for is about who is doing the mentor training.
Who does the mentor training? So our mentor training is developed in partnership with our stakeholders and our regional education service centers. Those are our 6 regional offices, RESCs. And so we develop that training. We usually have a team of people who are working on that training. We also get feedback and we share things with district people and some of our ed prep programs as well, because the training includes training for cooperating teachers. And so together we collaborate on developing that training. I'm usually a part of those conversations to oversee what's happening. And then once the training is finalized and approved, it becomes the training that is delivered by all of our RESCs. We also do train in-district trainers for districts that want to build their own cohorts, and they're also required to use that training. They need to go through an extensive period of being trained and then participating in annual updates so that they're current on what's happening with the team program and any modifications that we might have made to the training. For example, this year we've just launched our mentor training as a virtual training that is both, it's a virtual live training, so it's asynchronous and synchronous learning, and it's actually been going really well. But in order to be able to deliver that training, we need to engage all of those stakeholder partners.
Thank you, Claudine. We are short on time, so I'm going to stop having you address any additional questions, but there is one additional question in the chat that if you want to type a quick response to, Claudine, that would be great. And I'm going to move us forward so that we can close out.
Great, thanks, Jess. I want to thank our presenters today, and thank you also to everyone who joined us for participating in our webinar. We ask that you please complete the feedback survey. It will launch in your browser automatically. The survey really helps us to improve our work, and we value your input, so please do complete the survey. And thank you for joining us today. Today's webinar recording will be archived and uploaded to IES's YouTube channel. If you're registered for today's webinar, you'll receive an email from us with a link to the recording when it's ready. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us.